Welcome into the latest edition of the Spot Track Podcast. Brandon Kravitz here, along with our resident money man, Mike Ginnitti. Today's episode brought to you by Authentic Audio Productions. Keep that podcast running, keep it active, keep the costs down and the quality up all at the same time. Visit AuthenticAudioPro.com or email me, Brandon@AuthenticAudio.com for more information on all of that. It's Thanksgiving week, and yet we are saddled with Giants Cowboys tomorrow. We're still watching this, though, right?
Yeah, it's just the appetizer to get us the Packers Dolphins, right? That's the big one.
I've heard some conversation from sports media folks that there's an expectation potentially of diminished ratings. I know the game is awful. No one's necessarily looking forward to it, but it's still going to be on. This is part of Americana. It doesn't really matter if that's the thing that I think people don't realize, or maybe they do, and it's just not said enough. It doesn't matter what is on Thanksgiving. We watch football on Thanksgiving.
Yeah,
it's just a UFL game.
Even if it's just background noise while we're eating, right? It's going to be
exactly, and that's all it really is. Yeah. How many people that have a traditional Thanksgiving? I understand everybody's different, but how many people with a traditional Thanksgiving are sitting there locked in on these games? You know,
I mean, the gambling addicts, but outside of that, probably you're right. It's probably an in and out type thing. I'm looking forward to that night game, though. I'm looking forward to maybe managing my turkey intake so that I can make it to that night game at least for a half or so and see how the frozen tundra
holds up. You're managing intake so you can make it to a half?
I think I'm anticipating, the Dolphins in 20-degree weather with maybe some snow and it not going so well, and that would be enjoyable for a good half of football.
Okay, so a Packers first half bet and then go to bed. Is that what we're looking at?
You're on it.
That is, by the way, when I realized I was a true degenerate is when I was at a Thanksgiving get together. My grandma's chatting me up about something she's got going on, and I'm locked in on whether the Cowboys are going to hit the over. I think that's when you kind of know you've turned a corner. So I know that you spoke about this on Monday's show, but just to tie a bow on the conversation, because Mike, I don't know why you think you can have a running back devaluation conversation without me present. This has been going on for years now. Does this seem like a sharp turn is coming in the near future with the way that these guys, these free agents, the way that they've played under their deals, Derrick Henry, Josh Jacobs, and most notably a guy who is actually like 16-1 now to win MVP in Saquon Barkley, which is remarkable for a running back. Do you think we see a change in the market, or as you like to say, are these guys unicorns?
Yeah, to me, they're still above, in that top tier, and it's going to take an awful lot to get there, right? I'm not even sure Bijan and, I'm not even sure Jahmyr Gibbs is there yet, Brandon, right? Because he kind of comes with that 1-2 punch philosophy that I talked about Monday, which might be the actual approach, which is not, it used to be a 1-2 punch of let's just get two veterans on near minimum contracts and hope that we can turn that into one amount of running back production, which costs us a total of $6 million. But what Detroit's doing is paying a running back, paying a high paid rookie running back. And then I think they're going to keep both for the foreseeable future. So I think that what may be devaluing the devaluation is the mindset that these guys shouldn't ever get paid. I think that's going to change a little bit, but it's never going to be back to Adrian Peterson numbers and Chris Johnson numbers. I know those days are gone, and all you have to look to is the quarterback money to understand why that's happening. But I'll put it this way. You mentioned a very important point, which is that Barkley and Jacobs and Henry got the money because they were available. That might be the biggest change we see they're just not going to let these guys go anymore. They're going to hold them hostage with double franchise tags, which is going to pay them. So I'm not going to cry too much for that process. Or they're going to hold them hostage with the Jonathan Taylor extension, right? Or some sort of the Montgomery extension that keeps them happy, keeps them in tow. Ramondre Stevenson got a nice deal. So, when you're talking Gibbs and Bijan and Kyron Williams for sure, who looks like he's in that group, Kenneth Walker, if he can stay healthy, he's in that group. I don't anticipate those players leaving their team for the next 3 to 4 years. And that's probably a big change, even just 18 to 24 months ago, where you're probably going to see rookies, finish out their contracts. They're not even getting the fifth-year option, right? Najee Harris, free agent this year, no fifth-year option because of it. That stuff probably starts to change as long as you're above average, and worthy. Whereas 5 years ago, that wasn't the case. That's how bad things got, right? Worthy running backs were just being allowed to walk because teams thought they could bring them back on half of what their cost would be to keep them. That probably changes, which is a good thing. It'll flatten out a little bit.
Yeah, and it's not just value in terms of overall contract. It's also value in what you would go for in the trade market. And it was hard to trade a running back years ago. I think teams are going to look at what guys like Henry and Saquon have been able to do to lift the ceiling of those two franchises and perhaps make more aggressive deals to bring in guys. If the Lions were at a standstill with a contract with Jahmyr Gibbs and you've got another team that is on the doorstep of competing for a championship, perhaps he goes for more than he would have gone for in the past.
It's an interesting.
Maybe that's the way we start to see.
That's an interesting thought, right? Because Tennessee essentially is getting a comp pick for Derrick Henry, and
that's not happening in the future. I think that might be the big change that we see.
Well, maybe I'm reading what you're saying incorrectly, but would they have been better off trading him at the 2023 trade deadline? You know what I mean?
Yes.
Knowing what we know now, right? It's the baseball conversation. Do you keep your star for an extra 2 months and try to sell some seats and make yourselves watchable, which is what Tennessee was doing? They were trying to keep him as a Tennessee Titan for as long as humanly possible. I don't think they ever thought in a million years that Derrick Henry would A, be getting $9 million a year, and B, would be the top running back in football. And, now we've got two guys that have that conversation, and Barkley and him, and Jacobs is third right now in this conversation, which is remarkable. So yeah, that might change. It might be not only do they keep them on, fairly valued extensions, but they also might be coming back into the trade deadline conversation, which is good. That's how momentum starts to pick up with the position, is when there's 12-month conversations happening about the need for new players.
And it is nice to see that the water is finding its level, because teams years ago really was starting with the Patriots. They went with the running back by committee approach. They started to not use workhorses in the same way. That devalued the position, but now it's got guys extending their careers. You see a Derrick Henry who doesn't have as much tread on taken off the tires as he would have if he was in the 90s. I
love that you're blaming the Patriots for this, by the way. That's partially a phenomenal move.
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate that. A lot of talk about where Daniel Jones could end up next. According to Josina Anderson, Jones will be telling teams by today about his decision. So I don't want to dig too deep, because chances are by the time you're listening to this, it could be very old quickly. But your best guess as to where we hear him go, what sort of news he's going to drop. And I'm a little surprised that Daniel Jones is going full LeBron James on this. Like he's got a decision. Do we get a TV special here?
He's going to be on the Macy's parade on a float that's decorated in the team that he's picking. I mean, for the love of God. There's three teams that make a hell of a lot of sense. And by the way, one of them I've already mentioned. I do think Miami should do this. And I'm going to say this, even though I understand it's a bad week to be talking about negativity, but I'm worried about Tua on that frozen ground. I'm worried about him. I'm worried about him taking one hitting the back of his head on a frozen field that has taken out a lot of people in the past, for a lot of years. And I don't think Skylar Thompson is even a backup quarterback in this league. I just don't, right? So if Miami really thinks that this week is an all-in week for their season, and I think by all intents it is, Daniel Jones should be on this roster, okay? He should be on this roster by the end of business today, and he is a viable step in and just go kind of guy. San Francisco's the same way. I think the Brock Purdy situation is fluid. Their entire season, it might be toast, but their entire season is riding on Sunday Night Football in Buffalo, and it's going to be snowing, and we've seen a lot of injuries happening in Buffalo. I've seen them in person in front of me. Same conversation. So if Brock Purdy is even a little bit, less than 100%, obviously Brandon Allen's not the answer. As we saw last week, that was a mess. So Daniel Jones is a viable upgrade in that position. And then the one that makes maybe the least amount of sense, but still makes a ton of sense, is Baltimore. For all the conversations we're having, Lamar's running more than he's run in a bunch of years. He's leaner. He's still just as productive, but they're one hit away from this being Derrick Henry's offense. And you better have a viable option for the next 6 to 7 to 10 weeks if you think you have a serious run on you. So those three make the most sense. It sounds like he's already poo-pooed the idea of, the Raiders or teams that could use a starting quarterback right now. And I kind of understand that. You got to let things breathe a little bit after the mess that just happened in New York. I understand him wanting to kind of float for 6 weeks and attach himself to a positive situation, both for his mentality and, like I said, just to let things matriculate. And then next March, as long as some things break the right way, he's probably still the number one quarterback option available, not named Sam Darnold, but in that conversation, right?
Yeah, and I think I'm going to get a little bit deeper into this in terms of just don't give up on him just yet, because we do this all the time with these quarterbacks, but he's targeting a contender, and I wonder if Miami and San Francisco fit into that category, because they're a week away from not even being involved in that conversation. Mathematically not eliminated, but the Dolphins are a game and a half back of the 7th spot right now, and the 49ers are fading quickly. He could definitely help. Those are good spots, but the Baltimore one, he could ride that right into the playoffs.
Yeah.
And so that a situation like that might make a little bit more sense. Do you think there are double-digit teams that are really interested in bringing him in because the backup quarterback position is such a valuable one?
I think a lot, for the most part, this season, this off season, most teams really did a nice job addressing this. There's some names that were thrown out there that I'm not sure I understand. Buffalo's one of them. Mitch Trubisky's not going to run out there and be Josh Allen, and by the way, there's no backup quarterback that's going to step in right now and be any shell of what their QB1 is. That's the gap right now we have. There's 13 or 14 legitimate QB1s, and everybody else has started playing for second place. So, yeah, I think most teams have this figured out, especially for the rest of 2024. But you want to throw an extra $1.5 million offer at Daniel Jones right now to block him from going to one of these teams for playoff positioning reasons. I'm not going to rule that out. I'm not going to rule that out by any regards, right? So there's gamesmanship that happens this time of year. It's going to be a small price to pay because the Giants are on the hook for 35.5, and anything that he makes elsewhere will be offset from that. So it's a nice situation. I don't think anything that happens over the next 6 to 10 weeks with Daniel Jones will have anything to do with his 2025 situation. I think it's going to be a complete start over from scratch evaluation process. He'll be on that Baker Mayfield 1 for $4 million with a ton of incentives if he starts and wins games. That's been the standard status quo to kind of, restart a career and in hopes of becoming a starter again. And by the way, we've got 3 to 4 examples of that actually happening now. So you're right to say we can't rule this guy out. I just wouldn't count on it for this season. That's all.
And that's the way that it's gone. It's the interesting thing about these turnarounds that we've seen. Baker Mayfield, Geno Smith, Sam Darnold, look at their year-by-year breakdown. They each were given about 4 years with their original team before being given up on. And then they bounce around to 2 different places before they land in the place that actually works for them.
Yeah.
And for all 3 of those guys, it took them 6 seasons to get to that point. Is there any reason why that would be the number? I found that I don't know if it's just coincidence or what. But Geno, Sam, and Baker, it took them 6 years to find their new home and to really find their footing in the NFL.
So that's phenomenal math out of you. I'm going to go a different direction. I think the answer is just as easy as get out of New York, get out of Cleveland, and get out of Carolina, right? Isn't that the actual investigation here? New York, Cleveland, and Carolina. Those are just three absolute no's, right? And then you can restart your career and work yourself into a situation. It's why I don't hate Jones to San Francisco right now, even if they're not in the postseason, right? Something
just for
happened.
The Shanahan rub rehab.
Something happened with Sam Darnold sitting behind that whole situation, holding a clipboard, being the scout player, whatever it was. Something happened with Darnold that definitely turned a light bulb on for his game. And I don't think that's, too far away from what Sam Darnold could be. So, or excuse me, what Daniel Jones could be. So I like it there. I'm going to throw the Rams in this conversation.
Absolutely.
And maybe not for this today, but for March, because the Stafford stuff is super up in the air. I don't know if you've watched. His mobility is gone. He is not leaving the pocket. He's 36 going on 37. There's a very small guarantee next year. McVay could probably do wonders with a player like that. And kind of tried to do that with Garoppolo, but man, that's just never going to see the light of day. So they're going to be in need for some sort of start over plan, I would think. And Jones might be the best option for that in terms of free agency.
I was just looking that up as you were talking about it, and I am today years old when I found out that Jimmy Garoppolo was the backup quarterback for the Rams. I'm sure at some point I knew that, but it has escaped my brain.
Yeah.
I was expecting to see John Wofford or one of those guys.
Well, I mean, I think Stetson Bennett is actually the backup quarterback, and Jimmy Garoppolo is just getting water for people at this point in time. But yeah,
is Garoppolo out there? I haven't seen Garoppolo on TV. Is he hanging out with the Rams? Is he suiting up?
I don't think so. They might have just kept him in Vegas and said, "Go have your fun, and when we need you, we'll call you."
What a life! What a life to live. Let's transition to some big time baseball news. Smart move by Juan Soto, by the way. Brilliant advertisement from Celsius, the energy drink brand. Had the announcement on social media, put on the Celsius cap. I'm kind of surprised we don't see that more often. This was it was such a low hanging fruit advertisement, and I don't mean that in a disparaging way. I'm almost jealous. I didn't think of it first.
Does the team that signed him recreate that now, step by step,
That's a
frame
great
by
option.
frame? But it's their hat that comes on instead of Celsius. Yeah.
With the Celsius logo maybe on the side.
Sure, have them sponsor the whole thing. Yeah, here you go.
Any more news on that, or is he still dragging this thing out? It seems like, just based on the conversation we just had about an energy drink endorsement, that would be the case.
There's some news. There's two pieces of news to bring up here. Number one is that it sounds like it's going for a second round of offers, which means that, in my opinion, number one, nobody has blown it away. So I know Steve Cohen has been said to be out there $50 million above everybody else. I don't think I believe that anymore. Because if that were the case, unless he does not want to be a New York Met, and I guess I can understand that, then nobody has made the Godfather offer. Everybody's kind of within each other. There's a bit of a battle going on, and he wants to go through a round two process to see who really steps up their game. That's one. Two is, I put a tweet out yesterday, or a thread or a Blue Sky post. I don't know what the hell I'm supposed to say anymore.
Are you on Blue Sky now too? Very good.
Yeah, I've been. I was one of the OGs actually. So if you want to come find me there, I don't know why, but do it. I put a post out yesterday that referenced Scott Boris's last 18 active top contracts. Right, none of them had deferred money. None. He's just never gone that route. He has fought hard to get cash up front and not screw around with this, because his players have always been worth it. Well, he had a brutal offseason last year, right? The Montgomery stuff, the Chapman stuff, it was just a mess. Cody Bellinger. And we knew something was going to happen from that. And now we see Snell on a massive contract to the Dodgers, 5 for $182. $62 million of that is deferred, and $52 million of that is a signing bonus. Okay. Now, some of that is California and taxes and all that, and good for them. Some of that is Ohtani spillover. Some of that is the Dodgers are already at $300 million of tax payroll and need some relief. And all of that is part of this conversation. But the bigger thing to say here is that this is a significant deferred contract from Scott Boras, something we have not seen for a long, long, long time, which means that could very much be part of this Soto conversation now. If he's willing to do it with Snell, there's no reason to believe he wouldn't be doing it with Soto, which brings everybody back into the conversation, which means if you think the Dodgers, because they signed Snell, are out on Soto, you're just not playing the game the right way, because they're in. They're still one of the top three teams.
Well, so what is it about? Why is it that deferred money would bring those teams back into the fold? Why? Because it's not. We're talking about the wealthiest teams in baseball that are in on Soto. So why would it matter that much if they wanted to land him so bad?
So the biggest example is Ohtani, right? With 680 deferred out of 700. That dropped his tax salary, right? The actual CBT salary from $70 million to $46 million in change.
So tax fraud is the reason.
It's tax fraud, right? So for Snell, we're anticipating, instead of $36.5 million, it's going to be down into the 31s, the 32s, which doesn't sound like a lot, but $5 million, it could be their entire infield, right? By the end of the day, if they do things properly with some prospects. So it's a big deal. It definitely swings the pendulum way more towards the bigger teams. Not that it hasn't been. It's still Boston, Philly, New York, and the Dodgers, with Toronto kind of fringe right now, in my opinion. So they're all gigantic cities, gigantic franchises in on this guy. But in terms of the contract structure, 24 hours ago, I was thinking what the Dodgers were going to need to do was out of the conversation with Scott Boras. And now we have an immediate example to say maybe that's pendulum has swung a little bit.
So the Blake Snell news that you mentioned, he agreed to a 5-year deal worth $182 million per ESPN. Are those the figures that you're getting, or does baseball not have to play around as much as what we see in other leagues just because of the guarantees?
Yeah, it's nice, right? It's 182. Yeah. That's the number. I haven't heard about any incentives. The Dodgers generally don't go too crazy with that stuff. Maybe a Cy Young and an MVP in there, maybe. but I haven't heard about that too much. But there's a limited trade clause. This one's interesting. So he didn't get a full no trade clause, and most of the major contracts are getting that in baseball these days. He got a limited no trade clause, so he's got some say in it. But he did get a $5 million trade assignment bonus. So if they move him, he gets an extra $5 million in his back pocket. So there's worse ways to live than that. I mentioned the big signing bonus. That's happening quite a bit. Mookie Betts got a gigantic bonus to join the Dodgers. That's California tax stuff. There's a big difference between how signing bonuses are taxed versus actual week-to-week salaries are taxed in the state of California. That's going to help him. We mentioned the deferred money. Not historic for the Dodgers, but certainly historic for both Snell and Scott Boras. It's right up there. Like I said, I did the quick math on how this is going to shake down. And as of today, with no other news yet, the Dodgers sit about $304 million against the tax for opening day. That's number one in baseball. Massive taxpayers. They're in the like $30 million tax bill already. We're not even, into 2025. So they're in. If you think they're resting on their laurels and sitting on their hands after this World Series, they are going exactly the opposite route. And I would expect them to be in on the Sasaki Japanese pitcher, and I would expect them to be in on Soto until the very last minute.
And they kind of get to add another free agent arm if you think about it, because they haven't had an inning from Shohei Ohtani, and he gets added to the rotation next year as well. So
Bingo.
They continue to beef up. By the way, that's the third highest left-hander contract in MLB history,
nice,
next to David Price and Clayton Kershaw.
Both Dodgers.
There you go. Notice a trend here.
Yeah.
Who else is set to sign mega deals in terms of the pitcher market? You name a couple there. Corbin Burns out there to be had. Max Fried, are those some of the top guys?
Those are the two. Those are the two that can probably eclipse the 100 million, maybe the 200 million mark in Burns' case. I wouldn't expect players like Walker Buehler to get into this conversation. He's kind of on this this Daniel Jones type deal where he's going to have to probably earn a lot of it back with innings pitched and strikeouts and stuff like that to prove that he can stay healthy, because he basically missed 2 full seasons. But the drop is fairly big. This is more about trades, maybe for the next couple of weeks, right? Garrett Crochet out of Chicago is the big fish. We'll see what else comes out in terms of maybe Miami moving some of their players as their franchise continues to kind of stumble in the wrong direction. And maybe Tampa Bay gets involved as well. They've got like 7 starters. Most of them are coming back from some sort of arm injury. So the rehab stuff, once that becomes official and we see where those players are, I would expect them to move on for 1 or 2 of those names. And Shane Bieber, another name to think about, who just came off of arm surgery as well, but is one of the top tier pitchers when healthy. And I expect him to get some sort of nice 2-3 year deal somewhere.
I'm still not over the disappointment of Crochet not moving at the trade deadline last year. Oof. That was the name everybody was waiting for, and it just never materialized. So do you think that happens in the offseason, or are we going to drag that into the next trade deadline?
Yeah, especially now that the Dodgers have Snell, right? That took a lot of other teams' plan A away. So now plan B is Corbin Burns, right? And if Corbin Burns doesn't happen, and I realize there's a lefty-righty situation here, but there's definitely 3 or 4 names, right, that we mentioned here. And if teams swing and miss on all of these names, including Sasaki, the kid out of Japan, then yeah, you're gonna see the trade market really heat up, and maybe somebody comes in with that Godfather offer that Chicago's asking for, and that whole process of completely ripping the Band-Aid off begins there, because I think Lewis Robert is also receiving big trade offers right now, and those are really the 2 players left on that team worth a darn.
Skubal was a name that was involved in the trade deadline talk as well, but he was so good at the end of the year, and the Tigers made it to the playoffs. I assume that's you're shaking your head like that's not a thing anymore.
You take him and some of these position players that grew into the roles really nicely. He's Riley Green last year, and I expect that team to be, because that's kind of the Houston Astros model, right? They brought AJ Hinch and a bunch of really smart people with him over to Detroit, and I have a feeling they smell blood. And once Houston smelled blood and they had their plan in place, all of their future plans got expedited into that year. And I have a feeling that year might be the next couple of months. So I'm looking for them to be uber aggressive in Detroit and try to latch on to what the Lions are doing and reinvigorate that city from a sports standpoint.
Well, good. They're one of those franchises I like to see when the Tigers are good. They have a good fan base. That was a really fun team last year, and I'm glad they didn't strike in the trade market while the iron was hot. It seems to have worked out for them. Let's get to our quick hits to wrap today's episode. I'm going Turkey Day edition. This is all I have not shared any notes with Mike here, so this is a complete
I am not
surprise for him. Okay. All right, we'll start with an easy one. Thanksgiving turkey or Christmas ham? Highly controversial, so be careful with your answer.
Okay, I'm very Italian, so I'm going with this. I'm going Easter ham, but Christmas sauce. We break out the lasagna and the meatballs, and we go full Italiano for Christmas. That's still number one to me right there.
A great answer, by the way. Best bang for your buck as far as a Thanksgiving side dish. So we're layering in the Spot Track brand here with this. Okay, we're not just going with anybody can ask on a podcast or sports talk show, hey, what's your favorite side dish? No, we're going with the most economical. Okay, we're at the grocery store, we're picking out the ingredients, and then we're putting together. So it's a mix between price and quality.
Okay, I'm gonna make the most fourth grade answer ever. I'm going flat out corn, and here's why.
Wow.
Because corn has a job. Corn has got to sit inside the mashed potatoes and take the mashed potatoes to the next level, right? The crunch that you need to make the mashed potatoes perfect. You need the butter, you need the cream cheese, the sour cream, all that stuff. And then you add the corn on top, like a fourth grader, sticking his mouth into a plate. That's what you need. So I'm just flat out corn. Make sure corn is on the table. I don't need mac and cheese. I don't need the fanciness. I just need flat out corn.
And a basic can of corn right now going for about $1.59.
That's it.
I mean, we're talking about devaluation over the years. You don't see that a lot in the food market, but perhaps corn is still bringing it in terms of the overall efficiency.
I don't want to punt a lot, but when I do have to punt, it better be great, right?
What's the one that you're leaving off? You've filled up you've got one little corner left in the top right of your plate. Is there one that you got? I kind of have to skip that.
This is going to be controversial. I'm skipping the green bean casserole. Thanks. And I love green beans, but in that fashion, with everything else going on the plate, I don't need it that day. I can skip the green beans that day. I have it like 3 days a week anyway with my normal family dinner. So I'm going to throw that one off the plate and add another, freshly baked roll or another mashed potatoes and just the standards. I don't need to go too fancy here. So take away the creamy green beans and I'll go, for extra cranberries and turkey.
You got to go cranberry and
definitely.
I'm big on the uniqueness of the Thanksgiving plate, which is actually one of the reasons why if I had to leave something off, it would be mashed potatoes, simply because that's something I'm eating year round. Sweet potato casserole, even green bean casserole. I have green beans throughout the year, but the casserole, not so much. How about this? Macy's Day Parade production costs. They have soared from $4 million a year to $7 million. And celebrities are also starting to hike up their appearance fees. Would your best guess as to why that is the case? Is it more popular now than it used to be? Is it more expensive to get a celeb to do an appearance? Why is it all of a sudden more expensive to run this parade? You would think a parade would diminish in popularity.
I think it has, right? From an overall standpoint. I'm just wondering if the nature of the beast, I would think the business is getting more efficient as well, though, right? With all this damn technology we have and the ability to sort of CGI as needed. I'm not saying there's, fakeness happening, but maybe there should be if it costs this much to put it on. The people that are showing up and requesting a lot of money, I've been to this parade. I've been to New Year's Eve in New York City. I've been to New York City. I've lived in New York City. There's just a lot of people that don't want to go to New York City in the end of November at 8:00 in the morning and stand around 3 million people. So I think it's more of, if I'm going to do this, right, I'm going to need $3 million and travel and board and, and an outfit and everything. So I think it might just be that the shine has worn off a little bit on actually going to this thing and being a part of this. And I still enjoy it from, 1,000 miles away. But if it costs this much, man, are we going to see the end of this thing soon?
It's possible. And I know that I think NBC has to pay an exorbitant amount of money in order to get it. And for good reason. Your best guess as to how many viewers, the average viewership over the course of the parade that we had in America last year.
Let's see. I'm going to use the Caitlin Clark effect. I'm going to guess
now just imagine her appearance fee for the Macy's Day Parade.
Is 19 like really low? 19 mil?
19 is low. 19 is a little low.
Is it 35-ish?
It's 30.
Okay. All right.
30.
That's still good.
It is very good, especially when you consider, okay, the Lions are kicking off at noon on the East Coast. What do you think their average viewership is on Thanksgiving?
Oh, geez. Yeah, that's got to be around 19 then.
33.
The NFL is king.
The NFL is king. But what's amazing to me is that a parade isn't far behind.
That's fair.
It's right on par.
That's fair.
We are creatures of habit. The moral of the story here, as we wrap the Thanksgiving edition of the podcast, is that people are turning on the parade and they're just leaving their TV on for the rest of the day.
Just take the ratings, NBC. Just roll it out. Can we do a PTI errors and omissions real quick?
Yeah, please.
Daniel Jones to the Vikings confirmed.
No, come on. At the end? Where is this?
Yeah, just happened. So the team we didn't bring up, although we talked enough about Sam Darnold, that's a decent 1-2 punch for the Vikings here. Sounds like that's going to be the case.
And this makes sense. You wanted the contender. They're 9-2. And this is a team that went into the season. You said teams did a really good job with the backup quarterback position. The Vikings were one of them. Yeah. They had Sam Darnold or J.J. McCarthy set to be the backup this year. J.J. went down with the injury. And so this gives Daniel Jones the contender that he's looking for, gives Minnesota the backup quarterback they thought they were going to have at the start of the season, and a good offensive coach. Kevin O'Connell kind of falls off of that McVay tree. So this checks a lot of boxes. I think this is pretty perfect.
Perfect.
What a way to end the show.
9-2 team. They're kind of competing with Detroit here. It's a good fit. I'm mad we didn't bring it up 20 minutes ago, but now we get to kind of throw it to the end of the show before we sign off for the week.
Oh man, you're gonna have a tough time titling this podcast. Hey, Daniel Jones news in the final 3 minutes. Ramp up your podcasting efforts with AuthenticAudioPro.com. Do us a favor, subscribe and rate the pod you're enjoying right now, and make sure you visit SpotTrack.com for all of the latest in the sports contractual world. Till next time, Mike, and happy Thanksgiving to all.
Happy Thanksgiving, sir.